Imagine if you could easily find solutions to make your region or city smarter, greener, better connected, more social, and closer to citizens. The Interreg Europe Policy Learning Platform can help you. Access knowledge about the latest policy trends. Discover expert-validated good practices from all over Europe. Find solutions in our peer review. Get tailored support from our expert team. We can connect you with the right people and organizations. Together, we will find ways to solve your region's or city's challenges. Start your policy learning journey today.
Well, hello, good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to our webinar on reducing the emissions of urban logistics. The webinar is brought to you by the Interreg Europe Policy Learning Platform, and my name is Katharina Krell. I'm a thematic expert with the Interreg Europe Policy Learning Platform, and I'm here with my team members, Simon Hunkin, thematic expert like myself for Greener Europe, and Vladimir Sestovic, who is our technical man for this webinar. The webinar will be recorded. All presentations and the recordings will be available and shared with you automatically. And after the event, you will receive a summary of the key learnings directly in your email. We have quite a good audience today. I see you're coming online, so I hope some more people will join. The audience can interact with us through the chat, so don't hesitate to make use of that. Simon is going to monitor the activity on the chat and bring your questions to our speakers. Before we go into our presentations, let me show you what we have on the agenda. So I will start with a little presentation from the Policy Learning Platform so that you know who we are behind the organization of the webinar. After that, we will hear a keynote on reducing emissions in logistics and providing last-mile deliveries from Jorge Bandeira. He's from the University of Aveiro in Portugal, and he's also the lead partner of one of our Interreg Europe projects dealing with this topic of logistics. It's called SPOTLOG. Afterwards, we dive into 3 good practices or case studies, kicking off with a case study from Milan. Veronica Oppici is going to deliver that. Veronica is from AMAT, that's Milan's regulatory, mobility and environment agency, and she will present Milan's approach to reducing logistics emission, which is mainly a regulatory approach. Afterwards, we will hear from Lille in France, from Julien Bouvet, who works with the municipality, and he will describe a partnership approach between the municipality and the Poste, also as part of our SPOTLOG project. And we will end with a presentation from Giuliano Mingardo. He's from the Erasmus University in Rotterdam Center for Urban, Port and Transport Economics from the Interreg Europe ZZI project. And he will explain us the concept of city hubs and consolidation centers. So we have 3 different approaches to reducing the emissions in logistics. And after these, we will dive into a panel discussion and wrap up hopefully on time. So before going into the thematic presentations, I'll say a few words about who we are from the Policy Learning Platform. The Policy Learning Platform is a part of the Interreg Europe program, which is mainly dedicated to interregional cooperation and capacity building for public bodies at the regional and the local level. The Policy Learning Platform is, let's say, it's a tool for making the knowledge flow beyond the work done in projects. And we have a couple of services that we animate our community with webinars like today. We also do larger workshops to share experiences. We collect and curate a database of over 3,000 good practices from all policy areas that we're covering. smart, green, connected, etc. We write policy briefs and stories, and you can find all of that on our portal. We also provide on-demand services, expertise that is available to public bodies upon request, such as a help desk, a matchmaking, and the peer review service. So if you want to see who is the policy learning platform, actually there's a group of people animating all these services. So it's real people that you can see and talk to. A few words about our on-demand services, the peer reviews. On the next slide, yes, we have done over 80 of these specialized on-demand knowledge exchanges since 2019. Peer reviews can be requested by public bodies at the regional and the local levels. Any public body can approach us independently of the project work and ask for input. We will then recruit 3 to 5 experts from other European regions and animate a 2-day knowledge exchange. In the area that we're talking about today, transport logistics, we have already had 2 such peer reviews. As an example, we had one upon request of the city of Warsaw, which wanted to develop an urban logistics strategy. And we've just discussed this with peers from several countries. And we had another peer review more recently upon request of the Romanian Ministry of Development on the introduction of new low emission zones for several Romanian cities. And we have had here other cities that already had low emission zones to share their knowledge on sub-questions on how they've gone about. So that just to give you a snapshot. And yeah, with this, let's see how we can address the topic of urban logistics. And before going into the first presentation, I just want to have a little poll for our audience to get you warmed up on the topic and thinking. So what do you think is the share of urban logistics as percentage of the total trips made in a large metropolitan area? So I don't know, think of big cities. How many trips are made for logistics distribution as a percentage of all trips? Is it less than 10% of total trips? Around 15, around 20%, around 25? Or do you think it's around 35 of total trips? What are your estimates? Just click on an option to submit your vote. Now let's see. Okay, so we have, this is already good. Less than 10% of total trips, only 4% of you are thinking that. It's correct. It's way higher than that. So 20% each think it's around 15 or 20%. 1/3 of you thinks it's around 25%. And almost 1/3, a quarter thinks it's around 35. Well, we have a very educated audience. Around 25% of total trips is about right. Of course, it depends on the city. However, we have numbers from Barcelona, and logistics trip represent a staggering 24% of total trips. That's almost a quarter. I think it's a lot. It is a recent development, and it requires policy attention. So I'd like to hand over to Jorge for the keynote to outline this challenge and first approaches on what can be done about it. Over to you, Jorge. But you have to unmute yourself.
Thank you, Katharina, for your kind invitation from the Policy Learning Platform. It's a pleasure to be here and share some of our outcomes of the SPOTLOG project. I will start sharing my screen. It's okay?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, yeah, my name is Jorge Bandeira, and with my colleague Luísa Macedo, we are lead partners of the SPOTLOG project, and we are working on this topic on how can regions reduce emissions in logistics and in last mile. So I will share with you some of our learnings during the first year of our activities. So this is my outline for today. I will talk about briefly about some challenges that you face in Europe about the last mile. Then I will present some of our work related with a multidimensional indicator and last mile deliveries that we developed here. And finally, some takeaway message for all the regions. So you know that in the recent years, last mile deliveries have become increasingly important in the dynamics of our cities and are a pillar, fundamental pillar of our economy. And we know that this growth has to do, of course, with e-commerce, with online shopping, but also with the growing consumers' expectations that this trend of thinking, I want this product and I want this product now. This, as you can see, has a huge impact on the market growth. As you can see on this graph from the Europe last mile delivery market share and outlook, we can expect that the market in Europe will almost triple to 2030. And you can see that there is this annual growth of 9%, which is much higher than we expect for the growth of the economy of our countries in these years. You can see also here that after 2020, the COVID has some impact on the growth. It was the growth rate was a little higher than expected, but actually I thought it was much higher, but there was impact that is as you can see. So you see that you have this huge increase in the market, and together with the increase, of course, we have impacts. We expect more than 5 million of tons in 2032 related to last mile deliveries. And you know, you talk a lot about electrification, but it's not simple. It's not possible to replace all the system by electric vehicles. And even if it is possible, it's not enough to reduce all the impacts, not only in terms of CO2, but you are thinking in congestion and noise and other problems that we face. So what do you want to avoid? And what is the common objective of our regions? And if you focus on cities, so you don't want to solve the problem of urban mobility and then see our cities clogged up with noisy vans and motorbikes, with it's a lot of congestion, all this mess. This is definitely what you want to avoid in our cities in the future, and you can see by the numbers of the pool that you are driving slowly to this or fast to this scenario. But also in rural areas, you know that this is an issue. Of course, you want to ensure quality services in last mile deliveries, but you must recognize that specialized door-to-door services are not sustainable. Even if you go electric, taking into example for instance, if you want to deliver a potato peeler that you order in a remote town, and if you are focused just on this last mile, this deviation of 50 kilometers to deliver this, if you will use a diesel van, an average will emit just 27 kilos of CO2. But even if you go electric, you will emit also CO2 because you need CO2 for generate electricity and all the processes associated. So is not sustainable, this kind of approach. And of course, without reasonable consumer behavior, it is not possible to be sustainable and be green, even if you are supposed to buy some eco-friendly products. That's simply not possible to keep the same behavior and expectation of our consumers nowadays. So what do you want for our regions? You need responsible behavior from the citizens. It's the first and perhaps the most important thing to consider. We need consolidation of services, of parcels, of deliveries. You need as far as possible, the choice of eco-friendly modes to perform the last mile delivery. And you need to optimize all the chain by sharing resources, using, for instance, shared services in terms of public transport with delivery of goods, using, for instance, DRT services to share and deliver parcels together with the passengers. And you need regulation. You need to implement current regulation in all regions of Europe to be more to be strong in the way that you can demand for more efficient services. So, and to know how regions can achieve these goals, you developed in our project SPOTLOG a regional readiness indicator for sustainable last mile logistics. What are the objectives of this indicator? You wanted to promote a user-friendly tool using a simple exist or doesn't exist response format. The main objective is to share knowledge between the project partners, identify good practices from the innovative logistics solutions, and to understand the level of readiness to implement sustainable last mile deliveries in order to each region can learn from each other. And if one region is more developed in one topic, other regions can be learn from that region and vice versa. So what topics you are addressing? Last mile deliveries, it's just not about the type of vehicles that you are using, but it's an interplay of factors. And you here in this indicator, we consider four main pillars. In the social one, it's vital to increase the public awareness. You need to consider different measures in order to involve local community, but not just consumers, all the players of the city, the companies, the local shops, the operators need to be involved in this process, and there are different measures that I will cover in the next slides. At the infrastructure level, both the planning and existing, you can assess how cities are promoting, for instance, consolidation, but also the use of more eco-friendly modes for last mile delivery. And of course, in terms of governance, it's crucial to have current policies for promoting sustainable deliveries, and at the same time to increase the trust between stakeholders. Especially if you consider that this is a very highly fragmented market, and which is crucial to be coordinated, and to be coordinated we need trust among all the players. And also about the issue of planning, both, you know, that is crucial, the implementation of effective sustainable urban mobility plans and also sustainable urban logistics plans. And if we are coordinated, integrated, the better. And also, you also consider the rural dimension, because most of the impacts, not maybe the absolute impacts, but the relative impacts per unit of parcel are critical, and also in the rural areas. So in terms of social public awareness, all the indicator works like this. We have 5 measures, and the idea is that there is a checklist, and if the region or the city has this measure or not. But here you can see, for instance, the existence of educational campaigns to address consumers, for instance, through social media, or different measures for instance, sustainable procurement requirements and public tenders. I will not cover every topic for matters of time, but it's just to have an idea of some important measures. When talking about the involvement of local stakeholders, you can promote the use of commerce as pickup points. You talk a lot about parcel lockers, and you know that parcel lockers are a great solution, but with top-level planning and implementation, their efficiency can be significantly improved if there is a strategic planning when installing this kind of parcel lockers. And also promote the use of public transport for crowd shaping. At the infrastructure level, one key aspect is, of course, the existence of public urban consolidation centers, and we will talk about this. But we are talking also about very simple measures such as the existence of exclusive loading and loading zones, or the existence of the bicycle infrastructures for bike lanes, cargo vans, storage facilities. When talking about governance, there are a lot of small measures that regions and cities can promote, either from regulate and promote nighttime deliveries, or road pricing, or regulate the access to urban areas, or even to test new technologies more efficiently, like drones or autonomous vehicles, or subsidies to purchase of low emissions vehicles. And of course, the issue of creating trust among stakeholders, and this can be done, and you have several examples of city platforms and forums to involve the community. Also, the issue of develop data sharing platforms to facilitate collaboration between stakeholders and operators, and also implementing smart traffic management systems and city platforms, original platforms, to optimize routes, reduce congestion, and increase efficiency of the service.
Last minute, George.
Okay, I will just jump. I'm in the last slides about the issue of planning and how important it is to integrate logistics and goods logistics and passengers transport, mobility. This is we're considering. Also the issue of rural communities and the use of different measures, such as the involvement of the community as delivery points, the importance of the consolidation, and also testing innovative solutions. This is an example of some of the results of our consortium. You can see that all the regions, there are much space for improvement, but you have nice examples from the city of Mechelen in Belgium and Lille, in which you can see that you score at least 50% of the measures are already in place. So key message, this is my final slide. Integrating planning is fundamental. Harmonized mobility and the transport of passengers is good. You can optimize resources by an efficient coordination of these two worlds that so far having been working separately. The existence and the promotion of public-private synergies to promote consolidation and collaboration between all the sectors. But even more difficult is the collaboration between the in the private sector, the different players, in order to encourage low carbon solutions and share resources to be more efficient. And finally, coherent public policies, align regulations across regional entities. We know that one small city per se can change the world, but when many cities and regions work together and are consistent with clear rules, maybe you can create a more powerful way of change. Thank you. And I'm also waiting for your comments and hope to discuss with you these topics, and also invite you for the SPOTLOG events.
Thank you, George. Thank you. Very interesting tool to measure the readiness of the cities to tackle the problem of urban logistics. I think it's very helpful to think about the measures in the categories that you are proposing, like social, infrastructure, governance, and it's also very useful to have a special approach for the rural areas, because we cannot assimilate them to the urban areas. They deserve a specific approach. You say behavior change from citizen is an important aspect. So let's explore a little bit our own behavior in the next poll. Vladimir, let's launch a poll for our audience. The poll is anonymous. So let's be honest. How many online orders did you make in the last 12 months approximately? Less than 6? 1 per month? Almost 1 every 2 weeks? Or an order per week? Let's see a little bit how we as audience are performing. Let's see the results. Okay, 35% is making less than 6 orders per year, I was meaning. So there you are, very good. A third is doing 1 order per month. Yeah. Okay, so we are part of the problem. Therefore, we also have to be part of the solution, but we are not alone as being part of the problem. If we try to bundle our orders, for instance, we still have maybe ordered 5 articles at once, and they come in 5 different parcels by 5 different delivery vehicles on 5 different days of the week. So the industry is educating us to getting everything immediately, even if we didn't need that. But now we're getting used to it, we're expecting it. So we are part of the problem. The private sector is part of the problem. Let's see what can be done. And what can be done is, of course, to adopt a regulatory approach and to include in the city planning the issue of reduction of the emissions from logistics. And I'm very happy to invite to the floor Veronica Oppici from AMAT. And she will present us the very comprehensive approach of Milan to the topic. Veronica, the floor is yours.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm sharing the screen. Can you see it?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. So firstly, I want to apologize because Mr. Valentino Sevino was supposed to attend this webinar today, but unfortunately, he had an emergency to solve. So here I am. I hope he will be fine anyway. My name is Veronica Oppici. I'm a mobility planner in AMAT. I specifically work on urban logistic topics. Before going deeper with today's subject presentation and share with you Milan's experience on the regulatory approach to reduce urban logistics emissions, I would give you a little bit of context. The city of Milan is located in northern Italy. It has a population of 1 million inhabitants and counts over 40,000 commercial activities, which means a very busy and crowded city, very sensitive to freight distribution issues. Then the city has a particular orographic and climate condition, which causes frequent air pollution stagnation, especially PM10 and NOx. For this reason, the city administration has over the year paid a lot of attention to reduce this problem. And as many studies report that in Milano, road transportation is responsible for almost 40% of PM10 emission and over 60% of NOx emissions. A big attention has been posed on traffic regulations. In this framework, urban logistics plays, of course, a crucial role for both producing externalities, but also for the contribution that can give in reducing those externalities. In 2018, the City of Milan adopted the first Sustainable Urban Mobility Plan, which already contained indications for urban logistic management, and freight mobility demand was one of the main pillars the plan is based on. As I said, one important thing is definitely traffic management, which means also traffic regulations. In Milan, we have two big limited traffic zones, which are called Area C and Area B. The first one implemented is Area C, implemented back in 2012. It's also a congestion charge area, which covers the historic city center of the city, so the red perimeter that you see in the map. The objective of this limited traffic zone was to reduce congestion in this area of the city. And for that, there's the congestion charge. And the revenues from this congestion charge were useful for supporting public transportation development, but also to support businesses in the replacement of the most polluting vehicles. The Area C is active from Monday to Friday from 7:30 a.m. to 7:30 p.m. The access ticket for commercial vehicle is set now at 7.5 euros. There's a small reduction discount for those vehicles who are registered as service vehicles. There are, of course, restrictions for the access for certain type of vehicles, in particular for the most polluting ones, according to the restriction calendar that you see here in this slide, which is planned up to 2030. There are then limitations for some commercial vehicles, for instance, for those exceeding 7.5 meters in length. And commercial vehicles are limited to the time slot between 8 a.m. and 10 p.m., which is the peak time for people mobility. During this time, commercial vehicles cannot enter, exception for the electric ones and some other special categories. Both Area C and Area B are bordered by electronic camera, which check the compliance of all the vehicles entering the zones with the restrictions applied. And they also collect some specific data that are useful for the municipality to monitor and study the traffic trends. In particular, you can see here in the first graph, the average trend of freight vehicle transit in Area C during working days. Commercial vehicles accounts for about 14% of the total transit. We observed an interesting shift from the most polluting vehicles to the less polluting ones, and is increasing the number of hybrid and electric vehicles for the commercial vehicles. And as I said before, the main goal of this limited traffic zone was to reduce the number of vehicles, so the congestion. And since the activation, there's been a 40% reduction in the number of transits, including both cars, private cars, and commercial vehicles. And the effect of this reduction can be observed also in the three graphs below that show the reduction of the main air pollution elements within the historic city center. Then we have Area B, which is a low emission zone that covers 70% of the territory of the city and includes almost 97% of Milan's population. So it's one of the largest low emission zones in Europe. It was implemented in 2019 with a different objective from Area C. For Area B, the objective was to reduce air pollution and improve air quality. Like Area C, this low emission zone is active from Monday to Friday from 7:30 a.m. to 7:30 p.m. And there's a calendar of restrictions for the most polluting vehicles up to 2030 when is expected the diesel ban. And also freight vehicles exceeding 12 meters in length are forbidden to the access. Within Area B, there was launched a very interesting project, which is called Move In, which granted extra annual distances to those vehicles which did not comply with the emission standards. So those vehicles who installed an onboard unit were granted extra kilometers to be driven inside Area B, depending on the type of vehicle, the size, the emission class, were granted extra between 200 and 2,000 kilometers extra. So that was a way of the administration to help those who weren't able to change the vehicles but had limited kilometers to drive within the limited traffic zone. Also in this case, we can see the average trend of freight vehicles transit. In Area B, commercial vehicles accounts for 11% of the total transit, so a little bit less than Area C. Studies conducted, if we see the graph below, we see the NOx concentration trend since the activation of the low emission zone. And we can compare the trend inside the city of Milan, that is the blue line, and just outside the city of Milan, that is the red line. And we see how inside the city of Milano, there was a faster decrease of pollution. And in 2023, for the first time, Milano City was less polluting for of course, NOx concentration in summer, less polluting than outside for the first time. So traffic management and traffic regulation is definitely a strong key that city administrations has to improve the quality of air and traffic of the city, but is not the only instrument that cities have. Cities can be considered as living laboratories where it's possible to test new technology, innovative solution, implement trials to get knowledge and collect data. So this is what we try to do during the 2 years project supported by C40, the Zero Emission Urban Goods Transportation Program. That was a project specifically focused on supporting the city of Milan to accelerate the urban logistic transition to zero emission. The city of Milan, as many cities in the world, has been experiencing a very strong growth of e-commerce and consequently last mile deliveries. From a study that we conducted, we estimated that on a daily basis, more than 150,000 deliveries happen every day in the city of Milano. So we decided to focus on e-commerce last mile deliveries and test cyclogistic as an alternative solution to the traditional van deliveries. We didn't have much knowledge about this sector of urban logistics, so we decided to implement this pilot and test the sustainability of this solution from an environmental, operative, and economic point of view. So in 2 months, we tracked more than 4,000 deliveries that happened in a 3 kilometer square area of the city center of Milano. From those deliveries, we got all the data that allows us to calculate 3 different types of KPIs and compare them between the as-is scenario, so the scenario where those deliveries were made by a traditional diesel van, and the pilot scenario where the deliveries were made by cargo bike. The results that we got were very impressive. Cargo bikes are very efficient in congestion area. They have a very high delivery capacity, which make cyclo-logistic faster of vans inside the city, even cheaper if we compare the cost of transportation, and of course more sustainable for the environment. So this was a very good experience that is helping us to guide planification and regulations. Then last but not least, in March 2024, the City of Milano activated the first technical working group specifically focused on urban logistics. It's part of this working group the Municipality of Milan, AMAT, and Politecnico di Milano. Through a data-driven approach, we are analyzing the current situation of urban logistics, which means quantification and definition of logistic flows. We are analyzing the impacts of logistics on congestion, air pollution, and accidents, and then we will be defining the best solution and measure to be implemented, tested, and eventually in the future scaled up and replaced. And in the last part of this technical working group, there will be the stakeholders engagement that will certainly give an extra support in the decision process. So that's it. Thank you for the attention. If you have any question.
Wonderful. Thank you very much for your very comprehensive case study. I think it's extremely precious to have the experience from Milan, because you also have had time to measure the impact, because your measures have been implemented already some years ago. And it's great to see that the measures show a decline in emissions over time. So you can see that the policies are actually effective.
Of course,
and this is encouraging.
It takes time. It takes time to see the results.
How much is the lead time from taking the political decision to see a first drop in the trend?
I think that it takes at least 5 years. 5 years is the minimum time.
I think that's probably right. Well, you have very well thought through urban access limitation in space, in time, and for different types of vehicles. It's also interesting to hear that you use the revenues from the congestion charge to subsidize the change from polluting to less polluting vehicles for the private sector. And I think we also have a question from the audience for you, Simon.
We do, yes. So we had a question come in from Sergio. So you presented primarily discussing sort of commercial vehicles. He's asking if you've implemented any specific actions targeting specifically municipal service vehicles. So, for example, garbage trucks.
No. Those kind of vehicles is not included yet in the restrictions. Although the company that works for waste collection is during the time trying to replace their vehicles anyway.
Okay, thank you. Then we also have another question that's coming from Judah. He's asking if you could mention the main 3 barriers and challenges to implementing your solutions.
People commitment, of course, is the biggest barrier. Try to convince people that those measures will make the city cleaner, safer, and more livable is not easy to reach.
Okay.
We can think about the other barriers and take them into our discussion with the other participants at the end. Thank you very much, Veronica, for your presentation.
Thank you.
And let's hand over to Julien, who's presenting a very interesting, even though more limited experience from Lille. Over to you.
Yes, thank you, Katharina. So hello, everyone. My name is Julien Bouvet. So I'm Sustainable Mobility Officer in the city of Lille. And I will talk about a partnership that we've started with La Poste. And first, I will present the two partners for that partnership. There we go. So maybe some of you don't know where Lille is located. Lille is located in the north of France, and it has a crossroad in northern Europe because it's connected to London, to Brussels, and Amsterdam, and Paris by high-speed train. And it's also at a crossroad because you can see there, well, you can imagine there is the port of Antwerp, and you've got Rotterdam over there. And the highway basically to get to Paris in the south of Europe goes next to Lille. And we'll see that in the next slide. So what does Lille looks like? So it's the 10th most populated city in France. And it's part of the Métropole européenne de Lille, so Metropolitan administrative area of Lille, which is a group of 95 cities, which counts roughly as 1.2 million inhabitants. So here is the highway, goes right here. So next to the city center. So it causes a lot of problem, obviously, for trucks going from the north of Europe to the south, but we won't address that issue in this presentation. And just to give you, well, maybe we'll tackle that issue, but around the city, so you've got neighborhoods with the white lines, but around it you've got 9 different municipalities. So it's already well, you know, highlighting one of the challenges as well, being the city center, or the city at the center of the administrative region. You have to deal with 9 different cities out of the 95 out of the entire region, which might be different in other cities. And so the other partner in that partnership is La Poste, which is now a private company, but it was created out of the former national mail service. So probably all the different countries have one or had one at some point. And it has the responsibility for the universal postal service in France. So it has to deliver minimum or base public service of delivering and picking up mail from all the different parts of France. So why did we create it or sign that partnership? So obviously at the national and local level, there's a political agenda is to reduce carbon emissions in the city. In 2016, what could be highlighted from different studies was that deliveries were still made mostly by road vehicles. And there was also a plan of creating low emission zones in different metropolitan areas in France, starting in 2025. So since then, the plan has evolved a bit, and Lille has moved out of the, so it doesn't have to put low emission zone in place, but still at the metropolitan level, there will be some sort of low emission zone that will be put in place. And also, so what we got, and one point I want to highlight, is to create a win-win partnership. So you can't have one gaining everything from partnering with another group. So for us, we're collaborating with a major logistic operator, and so we get insight in what can be improved and what the city can do to make these improvements. So, you know, we get feedback from the discussions we have with people from La Poste on their day-to-day operations, on what they have in mind, on what at the group at the national level want to put in place, and what is coming. So we have that direct feedback and discussions with them. And for us, it's improving the efficiency of deliveries, and obviously making it a less with less emissions of from trucks and all, and make a more better livable city and public space. So the partnership started in 2018, sorry, and it was renewed for the period of 2022 to 2026. So what does it entail is regular meetings, obviously some workshops also on specific subjects. And we also have 1 or 2 meetings with elected officials to, you know, show what's been done in these meetings, and also reinforce, maybe sometimes change the direction on some of the topics that we have to work on. So currently the 5 topics that are part of the partnerships is the promotion of cargo bike logistics in Lille. So how can we make it easier and more efficient? We also want to offer a solution of shared logistics services for businesses in the city center. So shops and restaurants, for example, in the city center, improving the first attempt deliveries through alternatives to home delivery. So because you can try to deliver something, but if the person, there's no solution to receive it, then you have to come and try to deliver it a second time. So which obviously increase the number of trips for one delivery.
2 minutes.
Yep. Implementing policies regarding the localization of delivery areas and pickup spaces, and sharing of knowledge about best practices and innovative ideas. So what we've done recently, or what has changed, is La Poste has increased its number of cargo bikes for deliveries. So it was only 2 in 2023. It's now 8. They've increased the area covered by these cargo bike deliveries. We also found a solution for mitigating indirect problems created by the generalization of paid parking in the entire city. We also did, which is shown in the picture, the on-site study of what it's like to deliver and being a postman or postwoman delivering in the city. And we also looking at opportunities area where to install delivery lockers. And we exchange on different topics, and one of them being using tramways for delivering inside cities. So La Poste being a national group, they can see what's happening in other cities in France, and they are currently trying this in Toulouse. We might go into different other topics. So the supply chain of food deliveries in Lille, introducing a low traffic zone for logistics in the core city center. The interface with the city port, because we've got a port which is right on the left on the plan, and we could use that maybe a bit better. And also maybe something that's very specific, the impact of the start of the Tour de France in 2025, we might for a few days completely change how we can deliver in the city center. So this is something we'll have to address in the next few months. And to go quickly, the main thing is to creating trust with stakeholders. So we have the chance to discuss with a major player, I guess, in the logistics sector. And so we get feedback on what their problems are, so we can fix them. We can also present the plans that we have in mind, and they can tell us, well, from experience from other cities, what we have to consider. Sorry. And something to keep in mind is they are one out of many operators, so we can get feedback from them, but we can't obviously in a competitive market just like make solutions for them. It has to be a solution for all the different operators, logistics operator, and it's good to have like the sharing of knowledge. Like I said, being a national operator, they can give us feedback on the different ideas of different cities, and even from abroad, because like Milan would be a good example, but we had Padova also in mind, so there was some experiences that we were very interested in, and yeah, we'll study them even more now. Thank you for listening.
Thank you for presenting. Thank you, Julien. I think it's a nice case study from Lille that shows how a partnership approach can lead to impact the emissions of logistics. I have a question. You mentioned the cross-municipality cooperation would be necessary to probably tackle the issues at the metropolitan level.
Yes.
So you're talking for the city center, right?
City, yeah, it's the city,
Yeah.
which is quite small compared to the entire area, which is 1 out of 95 cities. Yeah, so just to give it an idea of the specificity of France, is like out of all the municipalities in the European Union, half of them are in France.
Oh, interesting. So you have a problem of working across administrative borders,
yeah,
which is
it can be
even
a bit
worse.
tricky.
Are you talking with the surrounding municipalities about the topic of logistics emission, because it takes all of them?
Yes, there's the Metropolitan administration that's supposed to do that. You know, talk between the different municipalities, but Lille being the main one, we exchange with the surrounding cities and also with the metropolitan area. So it goes in, the discussions are going in different directions. But yes, it's a huge topic, and with what I mentioned at the start, with the highway going very close to the city center, it's actually a European, national and European level if we want to reduce these transit of logistics trucks, and so that's why we also exploring the opportunities of using the port close to the city center to maybe move some trucks on the boats. And
yeah, I think France has quite a political decision to move more the goods over the
yes.
rivers. Yeah.
Yes, yeah, we there's ambitions on that, but it's like trying to put everyone, all the stakeholders around agreeing on one direction, and everyone pulling in the same direction takes a bit of time.
Well, we wish you luck in bringing on board the other stakeholders, and thank you for sharing this experience. Georges, the intermunicipal cooperation across administrative borders is maybe one indicator to be taken into account in your tool. I think it's relevant.
Nice point.
Good.
Yeah,
All right. This brings us to our last good practice. Giuliano. City hubs are a very hot topic, and tell us more about them. Thank you.
Yeah, sure. Thanks a lot. And first of all, thank you also for the opportunity you gave me to present this good practices. It's a little bit more than just a good practice. I will tell you in a second. My name is Giuliano Mingardo. Together with my colleague Merten Nefs, we have prepared this presentation, and we are involved in the ZCI project, one of the Interreg Europe project. We work for the Erasmus UPT. There's Erasmus Center for Urban Port and Transport Economics. It's just a long name. It's just a research institute within Erasmus University in Rotterdam. Basically, what we are going to tell you today, well, it's very, very, very short about what the ZCI project is. ZCI stands for Zero Carbon Infrastructure. And the main objective of this project is to strengthen the role of 8 public authorities in Europe to accelerate the provision of zero carbon infrastructure, okay? And basically also to give them the capacity building support, so it means giving them the knowledge to do that, basically. And as you can see in the map, or you can visit the website to have a little bit more information. What I want to tell you something about today is not just one single project, but something that we did in this project. It's called a masterclass. That is specific on sustainable logistics, and this was an event that took place in Cork. Cork is one of the partners of the project, of course. And as you can see, there were some main contents. I would tell you a little bit more about these contents about it, besides the cargo bike, because of reasons of time, and because also some other speaker already talked about it. But the whole idea is to discuss about, I will tell you also later about something about a masterclass, because a masterclass is a very nice way in which you can disseminate knowledge and really learn from each other. That is really the real core, let's say, of Interreg, is learning from each other. And the masterclass is a very nice way, because you put a lot of people together, they all have the same problem, and they come up with interesting ideas usually. So basically, in a masterclass, we first had a different overview of hub typology. Hub, well, without reading all of this, because it's probably too complicated, but the mobility hubs, both in terms of logistics or in terms of passenger mobility, is something very a hot issue, a very, let's say, trendy term almost in the last years. Well, there are different ways from small community hubs to the big city center hubs. Think about a central station, something like that. The bottom line is simply there is a diversity of hubs in terms of complexity, and also in terms of quality and kind of services that you want to serve. And from small to very large, there can be different, let's say, organizational issues and challenges that you have to address. And then very shortly, well, what we address in this masterclass, all different hubs. You have from micro hubs, is an example in London, Paddington Station, to what we have a lot of local foods hubs in the Netherlands, where you basically produce and distribute locally the foods, so the dark stores that are almost well, they appear and they almost disappear, at least in the Netherlands, in the Dutch cities. We have other types of hubs, like construction hubs are now very, very popular. This is the construction village in Brussels, where basically when you have a huge redevelopment in the city center, you don't want to have all the construction materials and vehicles related to the construction, well, going randomly all the city, and you try to combine them. So they are very popular. Also, the construction hubs, you can achieve a very high results in terms of reduction of emission and improvement efficiency in terms of constructions. And these are very important because basically you also save a lot of money when you do that. We are now in the Netherlands. We are also looking at the mixed-use hubs. Well, these are still renderings or artist impression, but basically the idea is to combine in new development housing with more logistics function. This is something that has also to do with another, let's say, main big issue in the recent years, that is the circular economy. We have to try to, well, make better use of our resources, but circular economy needs also space, basically. And it's nice if you can recycle or reuse something, but if that reuse has first to go to Southeast Asia and then to come back, well, it does not make that sense in terms of pollution or for the environment. So we also think in terms of about types of hubs. So there are different types of hubs. So these kind of mixers, and there are some big example, like in Amsterdam, we have what's called the city logistic hubs. It's a huge warehouse complex where there are a lot of basically attached to the water. So there is also a lot of water transportation, like they want to do it in Paris. Also, of course, in the Netherlands, it's quite common. There is a huge investment also in terms of power supply, because basically this is one of the few places, actually it's the only place in the Netherlands that are allowed to produce and sell their own energy. It's kind of an exception. In the rest of the country is not allowed, but it's just an experiment. Or example like Paris Chapelle International, that's in the northwest of Paris. That's also mixed use development where there is a combination. You try to combine logistics function with housing, offices, and other activities. So, and again, it's just an overview of all the kind of hubs you can have. So from very small to very large, from investments maybe a few €100,000 to really hundreds of millions of euros. And there is a huge variety on this. So it's interesting to know that there is a lot of been done. One important thing is that problems are pretty much similar everywhere. So don't think that, oh, my region is different, we have a different problem. No, they're all the same everywhere. So there is a lot you can learn from each other. And that's why Interreg is an interesting project, because you can learn a lot from each other. A couple of examples that we analyze in that masterclass. One is the Urban Consolidation Center for Dublin. Well, I guess most of you should be aware what an Urban Consolidation Center is. I think that the scheme shows pretty much the idea. You want to reduce the number of trips, trying to combining that. And the main idea of this trial was of this project, sorry, is to make a physical trial. We had a lot of, during this masterclass, we had a lot of partners in this project. It's called the Central Project, also an EU finance project. And basically, the whole idea was really to try one side. I think what the presentation from Milan was very clear. You need some time in between you have an idea and the time in which you develop that. And what we saw is that some of the most important barriers to these physical trials were, well, some technological issues. You know, different companies have a different scanning system and different IT softwares. Well, before you find one that operates all together, it might be complicated. The whole issue of trust, I think, is something also Veronica mentioned, something people got to collaborate together, but is basically what happens if something goes wrong. Once we consolidate that, who is responsible for what, and who is going to tell my customers that the delivery is missing, and so it was very, there are a lot of even if there are all these partners are pretty much willing to cooperate, you see that let's say the devil is in details. Sometimes you really have to take care of some small issues, and there are working agreements. I think also was mentioned in the other projects. Another example is it's a Green Deal. It's not the European Green Deal, but it's the Flemish Green Deal for sustainable urban logistics. That has been an input from the city of Mechelen that is in this project. And you see also here that the main aim is basically to try to improve the sustainability of delivery of e-commerce. This is specific to e-commerce. But as you also see here, there are a number of challenges. Again, the awareness among stakeholders, I think was also mentioned by Veronica, so to convince people to do that. The profitability of these zero-emission distribution centers, or that's what we call the business case. The cooperation through the whole chain, who is responsible for what. Very often there is also a lack of legislation. So you see a lot of entrepreneurs that have huge ideas, but unfortunately legislation has a different speed compared to the, legislation per definition is much slower than that. And there's nothing you can do about that because legislation needs time to legislate, basically. But that could be an issue. Charging infrastructure starts to become a big issue because the moment cities gave a lot of attention to charging infrastructure for passengers vehicle, but there is also a trend to change also in commercial vehicles to have more electric vehicles. Well, they do have different needs in terms of charging than not normal people, like they can charge at home or something like that. And also in terms of, at the end, of vehicle for logistics sectors, we observe the same thing happens, I don't know, 10, 15 years ago in the passengers cars, so there were very few electric cars. There are now happening also in the logistics sector. And basically the most important will be the business case. This is by far the most important issues. So the main conclusion is basically, again, from what we found from this masterclass is that the multi-use of space combined with new mobility trends creates a lot of opportunities. Basically, now we want to use space in urban areas in a clever way. Well, that creates opportunities by far, also opportunities for a new unexplored urban logistics solution. Major barriers, and one of the major barriers is the business case. At the moment, most of these cases do not have a profitable business case. And that means that in one way or the other, we have to subsidize them. So basically, someone has to pay for that, at least in the beginning. Cooperation, I think, is probably the second most important issue, as mentioned also by other cases, like Veronica said for Milan. and legal framework. Well, even legal framework, you can find an escape button, but the first two are the most issues, and now it's time to deliver. It's very difficult to do it because basically these are the two most issues. Finally, and then I conclude, I also want to say basically something about the masterclass, because this is something we did it within the ZCI project. A masterclass is not that difficult to organize. Usually it's a one full day event. There is a mix of speaker, can be both from the project itself, from outside the project. That's the nice thing of that. The platform is a nice example that if you need an expert on a specific issues, well, you will find one in Europe. They have an expert for everything. Most important is to identify a clear theme. A general masterclass of sustainable mobility does not help. You have to focus on something, and also make sure that the right stakeholders attend. So the real people with a real, let's say the problem owners of that is they attend the masterclass, and they can be very successful. They're not expensive to organize. Most of the projects have funding for that. If there is any need for help, let me know. I will be more than happy to share our experience with that with you. Thanks. That was all for me.
Thank you, Giuliano, and thank you for offering help with organizing masterclasses on this topic. I think it's very good, and it's good to focus. I mean, focus. You have shown us a wide array of city hubs and consolidation centers. So even if we focus on that, the topic is still wide enough.
Yeah, sure.
Thank you for showing us also the specific barriers proper to these kind of consolidation centers. I think it's very interesting also to think about the construction hub consolidation centers, like for specific events and for specific flows of goods, like large construction sites. This can be very useful. A question: if we think of city logistics hubs where goods are being shipped and then loaded onto another vehicle for the last mile, for instance, an e-van or a cargo bike, this is adding an additional layer in the delivery chain, and each interface is complicating the flow and increases the possibility for mistakes.
Yeah.
So such consolidation requires then the logistics providers to cooperate, share data, align their service, their pricing, and there's a question of responsibility for goal achievement if something goes wrong, and liability. So this all sounds like for the private sector.
It is.
What has to happen to make this happen just the same against all odds?
Yeah, that's an interesting point, because if you ask, no, there is no magic solution, unfortunately, for that. It is the most important issues, and even better, even stronger, I would say, for some logistic companies, the only idea to have an extra transfer is just to say, "Are you crazy? Completely crazy? We're not even going to start thinking about that." What it helps are those thematic. We see that the most successful are those thematic hubs, like the construction hubs, because you see that all companies, they're all working on the same redevelopment project. They all have the same, objective. And if there is a delay in the delivery of, I don't know, wooden parts, well, they all have a problem, not only one customer. So in that case, you see, because let's say they share the business case together. In that case, it's easier. Once, of course, you put together different companies, one producing a mobile phone, the other one delivery foods, the other one delivery. Of course, there might be always the issue, okay, who is responsible? I want to have priority because my goods is more important, stuff like that. So basically, there is no magic solution, but those thematic consolidation centers are easier to arrange and to create the awareness and the trust among stakeholders involved, because they all basically run the same business at the end.
This is a good indication. I mean, we should maybe not advise policymakers to start with the most complicated, but with something that, let's say, at least seems to be rather feasible in implementing.
Excellent. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you very much. I would like to use the remaining 15 minutes to have a discussion with all the speakers. Please turn on your cameras. And we have seen different measures. Different ways to approach the reduction in emission, in sorry, emissions from logistics. I want to hear a little bit from you. What do you think is easier for a public body? Which kind of the measures? Is it more a regulatory measure, an infrastructure measure, or working together with the stakeholders? Who wants to go first?
Maybe I can start. I think, of course, every measure is important, but for instance, you have this example of Lille, that is an example of collaboration between the public and the private sector with La Poste. And maybe Giuliano can help me, but it started also from the national regulation, from the need that all cities has to be a low emission zone. And I think maybe it's good to start for clear regulations, even stricter. And for my experience with private stakeholders during this year in SPOTLOG, the private operators didn't complain about the rules are very strict, but didn't complain. But they did complain about if the rules are not clear or they are not predictable. Because if they are playing all players at the same level, in the same field with clear rules, at the end it's a matter of internalize all costs in the system, and it must also start from clear regulation. I think it's very important.
Yeah, to add on your point, I have two examples in mind. So the low emission zone was obviously from the state level, national level, and all the cities had to put it in place. And one thing is the rules need to be clear, but also they need to be the same over time, because there it was announced, I can't remember, maybe 2019, I think, that by 2025 we had to have a low emission zone. So some companies started to invest in cleaner vehicles, for example, like electric vehicles, but then that now the rules has changed, and we won't have a strict low emission zone in place. They're like, well, we invested a lot of money and we won't get our money back on that. And it's the same issue with we had a consolidation hub next to the port, actually, that was in place, but because we don't have ZTL is the low traffic zone in place, it means that the one going through the deliveries going through that consolidation hub and then delivered by cargo bike, for example, are more expensive. But because you don't have the constraint on the city center to limit diesel vans to entering the zone, it means that you have it's not a fair competition, because you have virtuous low emission operator, and then on the other side you have the guys doing the same as they've always done. And because you don't have the constraints to entering the area, it means that, well, we'll go with the cheaper one, and the cheaper one is the one doing the same things they've been doing for, well, decades now. So you need to have both. You need to have the incentive on one side, but if there's no regulation or no constraint, and I think Milano explained it well, well, it's just like, at the end of the day, is money. So if you're the cheaper, people will use your services. If you're more expensive, but you don't have low emissions, or you're virtuous in your environmental policies, well, people will choose the cheapest. So yeah, you need both.
Thank you. Veronica, you have an opinion on that?
It's not easy to pick one. Definitely cities' role is to define rules and have a vision of what's the type of city they want to reach. And then it's important to engage stakeholders as well to make the process the most efficient as possible. Regarding what Julien said about giving advance all the information that make the transition possible for all the city users is essential. But for instance, Milan experienced a delay in the calendar restriction due to the unexpected vehicles market changement in the last few years. So we delayed, we had a 1 year delay in the calendar on the restrictions to adapt the restrictions to the market. So this was good for certain operators and people. Maybe it wasn't good for some other that were already ready to change the vehicle. So it's always difficult to find the best solution that make everyone happy. But I totally agree that every rule or policy that has to be implemented has to be communicated in a clear way as in advance as possible.
Yes, we have seen that also from the renewable energy sector. The private sector accepted the target setting, and in those countries where the rules were stable, predictable, and didn't change over time, the market picked up and followed nicely. And the countries that had constant changes, the market did not follow at all. So I think the predictable long-term framework is crucial and is a good takeaway also for this area. Let's move a little bit to the question of costs that you have raised in your presentation, and I think it's an interesting one. Maybe let's hear from you. What do you think is the most cost-effective way to reach the reduction in logistics emission? And then the question is, cost-effective for whom? Is it for the public body, or is it for the logistics provider, or for the final client? But maybe Veronica, you start, because you have shown this interesting slide with the KPIs from the cycle logistics pilot that showed a clear cost reduction potential, and it looks like a competitive solution.
Yes, we had this very positive experience with cyclologistics. In the beginning, when we firstly thought the pilot, we saw a very strong resistance from logistic operators regarding the effect of brake load on the supply chain distribution. But then the results of the pilot told us that actually cyclologistics is very economical effective. So it was a good surprise for logistic operators as well. I had another thing to share with you that regarding the Area C, that due to the traffic reduction, logistic operators experience a 10% increase in productivity. So although there's a fee to pay, the congestion reduction help them to improve a little bit their productivity, because they can go easier in the city center. So the cost effect, you pay, but you can have a better space where to move.
That's interesting. Can you share material about that with us for inclusion in the follow-up? I think this is very interesting.
Yes. Those are insights from our experience.
Very precious. Others on the cost effectiveness of the different approaches?
Well, maybe again, as besides that, there are let's say the thematic hubs are probably a little bit easier to get more cost effective. Again, generally speaking, I think the urban logistic issue is very complicated. But on the other side, we also have to consider like a new development, like happened in many other sectors in the society in the past 200 years. And as always, at the beginning, there is a slow begin, and that slow begin can be stimulated by the government. And that's also very often the role of a government to push on that. So I don't think there is one, of course, a cycle. If you look at the bicycle, the cargo bike is probably one of the best example ever. And then the question will become, okay, well, how many bikes do you need to answer that? And then every time you find a solution, there is another problem. It's not a big deal. The point is, I think this should be a kind that local government, but even better, national government should recognize if they really want to stimulate this, They really have to invest heavily. You can't expect always the private sector to do everything, because they will find you a huge list of problems why they don't want to do it. If you can take away a little bit of the financial insecurity, it might help a lot to stimulate. And then once we see in the construction village, once they understand themselves that they actually gain money in doing that, and they do it themselves, they don't need any kind of support anymore. But the initial boost, it should be in one way or the other a government, or at any level, doesn't matter which one, but a form of government.
Okay. Julien, maybe you also have a take on the feasibility of using the cargo bikes for all types of deliveries. Certainly there are limitations.
Yes, one topic we've seen is the fresh produce, which obviously is very well, or even more local produces in local production that you want to be delivered in the city. So that's one of the topics we have in mind. So it needs, because everything is so centralized and rationalized. It means that's produced, harvested from many different parts, are then consolidated in one area, but at an almost national level, and then spread out, delivered in many different regions. But then if you think about local production and local delivery, you need to completely flip the model around. So that's very complicated, because the operators, they've optimized one way of doing things, but which might not be what we want as for the public good, I guess. And for cargo bike, yeah, when you deliver with the cargo bike fresh produce, if the produce that gets delivered is not in the right condition, for, well, I don't know, the chef at the restaurant who's responsible, you need to be sure of who's liable and who's responsible for this, because every time you add a step in the supply chain, you add, like you said earlier, more possibilities for problems, and you add different condition for one part of the trip, of the way everything is conditioned. So it's very tricky. But we've seen in I don't know, it is in English, but Merlin or Malines in French, in Belgium, there was one operator, a very small one, that was able, and he was certified to deliver fresh goods for the city center once the traffic low traffic zone was in place. So after 11, I think, from what I remember. So it's possible, but it needs to be, it's a change in the rules and the ways we've been doing things for the last few decades. And so I think it would be interesting, all this.
Thank you. I'm sorry.
Sorry.
It's a bit of time
Sure.
is ticking, and we're reaching the end of our webinar. We see that this topic is posing a lot of new questions, and is confronting with urban and non-urban as well, mobility policymakers and agencies with a lot of questions and new challenges. I feel we have just scratched the surface in this webinar, although we have visited and dived into several approaches to tackle the topic. If any of you wants to dive deeper, leave us comments in the survey as you end the webinar. There's a survey that will pop up, and you can propose topics to go deeper. We also have our on-demand services. If individual public bodies, like a city or a region or a specialized agency, wants to dive deeper, we can always explore if you are eligible for an on-demand service, like our matchmakings or like our peer reviews, and certainly for our help desks. Before concluding, I would like to give the word a last time to each of the speakers for a final sentence or two on your main key takeaways. And I would like to go in order of presentations. So what do you take back home from this webinar, Jorge?
Hello. I think one important thing, maybe you must start thinking like we did with passenger transport of passengers a few decades ago. The idea is to put more people in the same vehicle. The idea is to charge implement carbon taxes on fuels to subsidize public transport. And I think you have to also not only integrating the transport of goods and the transport of passengers with sharing resources, but also adopting this logic of internalizing the costs. Because if you want to promote the use of public transport, is because at the end the costs for society and the external costs are less, and so it's better to subsidize these systems. So I think you should adapt this strategy of more internalization of costs for the consumer, more regulation to do the boost for the private sector, and then cooperate with all parts to increase the efficiency of the system. That's the main point, I think.
Thank you, Jorge. Veronica?
Well, I think that most of the cities share the same challenges and barriers. So certainly moments like these are important to get lesson learned from other cities and see how it is possible to internalize those lessons learned and develop in our cities. Certainly, I think that is important to promote more equity. So if urban logistics produce more externality, it's important to give a cost to those externalities and introduce in a not a price, but try to convert these externalities in a good way for the city.
Interesting. Similar thinking. Thank you. Giuliano? Oh, sorry. Well,
yeah, okay.
go
Well,
first.
I'll be short, I think, because they already mentioned quite a lot of things. I think for me, the main takeaway is basically is just do it, you know. I think also the example of Milan showed that it takes time. There are a lot of people contrary to that. They all complain, but just go for it and try to do it. Even if it's small, it doesn't matter. Start, and you will see that then the sector will find, they realize themselves is good, and then will take up by themselves.
Yeah, this is true. We don't have so much time to lose because the problem is every day and it's in front of us. Thank you. Julien?
Yeah, to add on that, you need vision. I think Veronica mentioned it. You need a vision, you need courage, and you need time to, it's possible. Milan just showed it, and other cities as well. We need to get inspired by what's being done in different places, because then you got a clearer vision and you can adapt for the different situation in different cities. But the solutions are there, and we need to start and show that it's possible. Like Giuliano said, we need to show by maybe small steps, small tests and trials that it's possible, and then we need to, over time, encourage we can scale it and be the new normal.
Thank you very much. Ending on a high note, that is important. Thank you for that, Julien. I would like to thank all of our speakers for very good contributions and good presentations and nice contribution to the discussion. Thanks for that. We are looking forward to keeping in touch and to seeing a few months from now how your projects are evolving. And if you're ready, then we will present an updated, let's say, format of this webinar. Thank you for our audience for being patient and listening, and don't hesitate. Well, you have not been so super active, but I see that we have many positive comments from the audience, seem to be appreciating the presentation. Don't hesitate to show us in the survey what else you need and what we can do for you. And thank you to my team colleagues. And with that, I would like to wish you a very good afternoon. Goodbye.